I'm so excited. Hi, everyone. Chapter 16, Searching for Dragons. This is for HP Fish 13, who's lovely, and I hope I get to see again sometime in the near future, in which Mendenbar cleans up with soapy water. Mendenbar blew out the lantern and set it on the floor. They didn't need it anymore anyway. They were near enough to see by the light of the wizard's torches, even in the shadows. Carrying their buckets, Cimmerian, Morwen, and Telemaine slipped behind nearby pillars as another wizard came around the corner from the far end of the cave. Most gracious and powerful head wizard, he said, bowing to Zeminar. We've checked everything at least twice. There's no one outside and no sign of anyone coming. That spell Zinamon felt before must have been some sort of normal variation. Behind the pillars, Mendenbar winced. The wizards had noticed the locating spell he had sent out earlier. Cimmerian frowned and shook her head at them, but he wasn't sure what she meant by that. Morwen scowled at them both and put her finger to her lips. Possibly, Zeminar replied. I don't want to take any chance, though. The king of the enchanted forest has a certain amount of magic, and we don't fully understand it. Call in a few more wizards, just to make sure. If we don't want to take chances, we have to use up the dragon now and get out of here, Dizenel said. I'm with you, the most recent arrival agreed. Dragons make me nervous. Are you sure she can't get out? If she could, she'd have done so right away. Zeminar said, Don't worry about it. We put the power of at least an acre of the enchanted forest into building that shield, and no one can lower it except us. Are you sure? The wizard persisted. Take a closer look if you're not satisfied, Zeminar said, waving at the glow. It is impressive, the wizard said, moving nearer, but with a spell this new, how can you be positive? Say, what's that? At their companion's change in tone, the wizard's head swiveled to look at Kazul. For a frozen moment, no one spoke. Then the wizard at the back said, It's a cat. Oh no. Control your cats. Mendenbar glanced sideways in time to see Morwen shake her head and take a firmer grip on her bucket of soapy water. He grimaced. They had only 6 buckets of soapy water among them, and there were already 11 wizards in the cave. If it came to a fight, they would be badly outnumbered. How did a cat get inside the shield? Another wizard asked. It wasn't there yesterday. It wasn't there a few hours ago, Dizenel said. Where did it come from? Spread out and search the cave, Zeminar commanded, rising, and bring in the dragon's bane. Someone's snooping. The wizards fanned out across the cavern and started toward the forest of pillars. There was no way Mendenbars and the others could get away without being seen, and even if they had been willing to abandon Kazul to her fate, Mendenbar drew his sword. Soapy water or not, he felt better with a weapon in his hand. As the first wizard reached the pillars, he jerked in surprise and raised his staff. Before he could release whatever spell he had planned, a shower of soapy water drenched him from head to foot. The wizard shrieked loudly. Blast you 6 ways from next Wednesday, he shouted as he began to melt. This is the second time you've liquefied me. May you and your pet dragon and your triple-cursed washwater turn purple with orange spots and fall down a bottomless pit. The other wizards stopped in their tracks. It's Cimmerian, said one of them nervously. That's Princess Cimmerian to you, Cimmerian said, stepping out from behind a pillar. She held her second bucket in plain sight, ready to throw. I love her. By the way, he did that. I love how he did that long curse instead of being like, go to hell. Stay back, Zeminar ordered. Blast her from a distance. Cowards, Cimmerian taunted, and ducked behind another of the stone columns. Come and get me. It wasn't going to work, Zeminar told himself, taking a firmer grip on his sword. Zeminar was too clever to let his wizards chase Cimmerian into the maze of stone. They would stay at a safe distance and throw bolts of power into the pillars until they destroyed the maze or killed everyone in it. Or both. 3 more wizards came running in. Zeminar stopped them with a gesture. The rest of the wizards backed away from the pillars and lined up across the width of the cave. Now then, the head wizard said, lifting his staff and pointing at the pillars Cimmerian had ducked behind. Like this. Mendenbar felt magic swell around the end of the staff. An instant later, before he had time to reach for the magic himself, the spell shot forward and exploded, shattering the pillar and sending chips of rock flying in all directions. Ow! Cimmerian's voice cried from somewhere in the shadows. Without thinking, Mendenbar stepped out from behind his pillar, bucket in one hand, sword in the other, in full view of the wizards. Over here, he called. If he could distract them for a minute or two, perhaps Cimmerian could get safely behind another column. Mendenbar? For an instant, Zeminar looked thoroughly startled. Then he smiled nastily. How nice to see you. I've been hoping you would turn up so we could finish this little business at last. As he spoke, Zeminar stepped forward and shifted his staff to point at Mendenbar. Mendenbar raised his sword and stayed where he was. He felt magic building around the staff once more and decided not to wait to find out what Zeminar intended it to become. Instead, he reached out through the sword and touched the wizard spell, the same way he touched the magic threads of the enchanted forest. It was much easier to do here than it had been in the Mountains of Morning. The sword sopped up the spell in an instant. Mendenvar could sense the channels of power Zeminar had been using to feed his spell, and he touched those too, and pulled. The sword obligingly drank them in. "What are you doing?" Zeminar cried in astonishment, lowering his staff. His hair stood out around his head, as wild and tangled as the magical mess he'd left on the floor of Mendenvar's castle. "I'm stopping you," Mendenvar said. His whole arm tingled with the power the sword had absorbed. If he could just think of the right thing to do with it. "And a good thing, too," Mormon said from several pillars over. "You're too greedy for your own good, or anyone else's for that matter." "I'm not greedy," Zeminar protested angrily. "I have every right to—" "You're greedy, all right," Serene said from just behind Mendenbar. "And you wouldn't know what to do with all that power you want even if you got it. Just look at you. Your hair's like a bird's nest." Zeminar scowled. Mendenbar stared at him without really seeing him, trying to remember why Simrine's words sounded familiar. "The gargoyle," he said suddenly. "Why didn't I think of that before?" "What gargoyle?" one of the wizards asked. "Never mind him," Zeminar said. "He's only trying to distract us. All together now. Blast them!" The line of wizards raised their staffs. Mendenbar grinned and twisted the mass of power on the sword, just as he had done 2 days earlier when he had grown tired of the gargoyle's complaints. Soapy water spurted out of the empty air in front of the wizards in a hard, fast stream, as if it were being pumped through an invisible hose. The foaming spray washed over the entire line, thoroughly soaking them all. Puddles grew rapidly on the stones underfoot, and the wizards shouted and slid on the suddenly slippery floor. Several of them dropped their staffs to rub at their eyes, which had apparently gotten soap in them. None of them melted. Mendenbar felt a moment of panic. He'd been sure that his magically created soapy water would work just as well as the buckets that they had hauled with them from the castle, but it didn't seem to be doing anything. "Oh, I thought it would work too." The wizards would get themselves together any minute, and what would he do then? "Did you remember the lemon juice?" Simrine said in his ear. "Oh, right," said Mendenbar. He twisted the power again, and another spray of soapy water, this time smelling strongly of lemon, squirted over the wizards. To Mendenbar's considerable relief, they collapsed into gooey puddles, one after another. In another moment, there were no wizards left in the cave at all, only staffs, soggy robes, and a great deal of water and soap suds. Mendenbar studied the puddles, then set his bucket of soapy water on the ground. It didn't look as if he'd be needing it anymore. He kept his sword out, however, since he didn't know how many more wizards might still be outside. "Fascinating," said Telemaine. He moved forward and knelt at the edge of the puddle. "This mess appears to be mainly the liquefying agent." It does?" Simrine asked. "He means it's mostly soapy water," Mendenbar said. "And a good thing, too, or it would take forever to clean up," Mormon said. "Wizards are a nuisance, even when they're gone." "It's a pity it isn't permanent," Simrine said. "I'd like to get rid of that Zeminar once and for all." "Removing their staffs will delay their reappearance," Telemaine said. "I suggest we do so before we leave." "Good idea," Morwen said. She picked her way between puddles and began collecting the wizard's staffs. Telemaine went back to studying the puzzle. Simrine turned to Mendenbar. "Now, if Kazul can just—" "Oh, no." "What?" Mendenbar followed Simrine's gaze. The glowing golden shield spell still blocked half of the cavern, imprisoning Kazul. There was a long silence. Then Simrine said, "Telemaine, were those the only wizards right when they said they were the... I'm sorry, were those wizards right when they said they were the only ones who could take down that spell?" "What's that?" Telemaine said, looking up. "Really, must you interrupt so constantly? I'm never going to get anything finished at this rate. I think her issue is a little more pressing than yours." "But think of all the interesting things you're finding out," Mendenbar said. "This shield, for instance. Have you ever seen anything like it before?" I like that he did that. "Now that you mention it, no," Telemaine replied, scrambling to his feet. "Let me look at it." "That was the idea," Simrine muttered. They all watched while Telemaine examined the shield. He walked from one end to the other, then put a hand gingerly against the glow and pushed. When nothing seemed to happen, he twisted one of his rings twice and touched it to the glow. "Can you get rid of it?" Simrine asked. "I don't know yet," Telemaine said. "I'm still checking the parameters of the primary enchantment." "Oh." The magician twisted a different ring and touched it to the glow. This time there was a spark. "Ah," Telemaine said in a satisfied voice. "I suspected as much." "Well, are you going to tell us about it?" Morwen said as she dropped a load of wizard staff in a pile against the wall. "It's a self-sustaining barrier produced by a recirculation of the initial power input," Telemaine explained. "Because of the rotation effect, most physical substances cannot pass through the shield in either direction. Unlike the majority of spells, this one needs no exterior energy source, so the usual procedures for dismantling such sorceries would be completely ineffective." "Do you have to talk like that all the time?" "What does that mean?" Simrine demanded. "The spell keeps itself up. We can't get in or out. We don't have any way of getting rid of it," Mendenbar translated. "This is a good point." "Then how did the cat get in?" Simrine asked, pointing at Morwen's large silver and cream cat, which had climbed onto Kazul's back and lay curled up between her wings. Cats are like that, Morwen said. When he comes out, I'll ask him how he did it, if you want me to, but don't expect too much in the way of an answer. Cats enjoy being mysterious. How very helpful at this time. I don't care what they enjoy, Simran said. We have to get Kazul out of there, and if that cat can help... It is unlikely, Telemane interrupted, stepping back from the glow. The cat's method of moving through the barrier is, in all probability, useless to anyone else. Fortunately, we have other resources. We do? Telemane looked at Mendenbar. While I have not had a chance to make a thorough and complete examination of that extremely intriguing weapon you carry, I have observed enough to determine that its function is fundamentally antithetical to wizards and their magic. A straightforward penetration appears quite possible and would disrupt the recirculation effect, resulting in the collapse of the self-sustaining mechanism. What? Said Cimarine. Really, Telemane. Must you? Said Warren. Right, said Mendenbar. He took 3 steps forward and stuck his sword into the glowing spell. A jolt of power ran up his arm, and the globe of light flashed brighter than the sun. Mendenbar's eyes were dazzled by the flare, so he couldn't see anything except purple spots, but he heard a loud roar, the angry hiss of a cat, and the sound of scales on stone, so he was sure the barrier was gone. Kazul! Simran called from behind him. It's all right, it's not wizards, it's us. And about time, a deep, unfamiliar voice said. Hello, Cimarine. Morwen, it's nice to see you again. Who are the others? This is Mendenbar, the king of the enchanted forest, Cimarine answered, and Mendenbar felt her hand on his shoulder. He's the one who let you out. Over here is Telemane, he's a magician, and he figured out how to do it. Greetings, your majesty, Mendenbar said. Blinking, the purple spots began to fade at last, and he found himself staring into the green-gold eyes of an enormous female dragon. He only just managed to keep himself from backing up automatically. Pleased to meet you. Under the circumstances, most definitely so am I, said the dragon with a smile that showed a large number of sharp-looking silver teeth. How did you manage it? Weren't you watching? Cimarine asked. Watching what? Kazul replied. I couldn't see a thing except what was inside that blasted bubble with me. We could see you. The shielding spell was unidirectional, Telemane put in. The external absorptive effect would enhance its efficiency. Kazul gave Telemane a hard look and smiled again, this time showing all of her teeth. What was that again? Telemane looked at Kazul. Then he looked at Mendenbar. He frowned in concentration, and finally he said carefully, the shield was a one-way spell. It soaked up everything that tried to get in from outside and used the energy to make itself stronger. Very good, Morwen said. I was beginning to think you were hopeless. Haven't the slightest idea what you're talking about, Telemane said with dignity. A yowl of complaint made them all turn their heads. The cream and silver cat was standing at the edge of the wet, soapy, lemon-scented area where the wizards had melted, shaking his front paws one at a time and eyeing the water with extreme disfavor. Poor you. Too bad, Morwen told the cat. If you hadn't sneaked in and attracted their attention, Mendenbar might not have had to be quite so extravagant with the spray. You'll have to get across it by yourself. Where's Chaos? The cat blinked disdainfully and began washing his right paw. Kazul snorted softly. If you want to ride, climb up, she told the cat, but you'd better hurry, because I'm leaving now. Kazul rose to her feet, shaking her wings. The cat looked up from his washing, then took 2 bounds and leaped from the top of a projecting rock. He disappeared behind Kazul's shoulder, and there was a brief sound of claws scraping against scales. Then the cat appeared on Kazul's back, riding comfortably between the dragon's wings and looking tremendously pleased with herself. Cats riding dragons! Cats riding dragons! Wait a minute, Mendenbar said, as the dragon started toward the other end of the cave. There may be more wizards out there. Good, said Kazul without slowing down at all. 4 days is a long time to spend inside a blank bubble, and I owe them one. Besides, I'm hungry. I should think so, Cimarine said, following the dragon. Didn't they give you anything to eat? No, and I wouldn't have taken it if they had, Kazul said. Her voice became muffled as her head turned the corner at the far end of the cave. For all I knew, those mumble could have had mumble dragon's bane in everything I mumble handle up like to cause. But if there are more wizards, Mendenbar began, then gave up and hurried after Cimarine. Clearly neither she nor Kazul was going to listen to him, and if there were more wizards outside, it would be better if he and his sword were there to help. Bless. I love it. Everyone helped. Everyone helped. It's great. It's wonderful.